Well, we're a little late. First item is a report of action taken in closed session by the city attorney.
Yes, the council added a single item to those listed on the agenda for closed session of potential litigation, and discussed those items in closed session, and there are no reportable actions.
Thank you. Now we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Grunmeyer, and she will then lead us in invocation.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Haven't done this in a while, so please join me in our invocation. Dear Heavenly Father, I would like to thank you for the opportunity for the council and city staff that we are able to serve the residents of the city of Norco, Lord. We are uniquely blessed to be in this community where neighbors care about neighbors and people care about the special lifestyle and community that we have here. Thank you, Lord, for helping us to work with the residents and work with each other to do our very best to sustain those things which we have all found so very important. Lord, I pray that you would continue to watch over our community. There's still so many factors that are causing stress for people in their jobs and in their homes. And so I just pray that you would be with everyone as we continue to navigate these situations that we're all unfamiliar with. And Lord, I also pray that we would be able to, as a community, extend grace to each other during these difficult times, just the same as we would want it extended to us. So I pray that you would be with us this evening, Lord. Guide us in our decisions, and just keep the city of Norco safe and secure. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. Next item is the City Council communication reports. Call on Mayor Pro Tem Bash to start the communications. PowerPoint will appear on the screen for each council member.
I did attend the Riverside County Mayor's meeting, and I'll be sending out to council. We have something at WRCOG, kind of a special conference that's an online conference with several topics, and as soon as I get the flyer, I'll send that out to everybody, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Grunmeyer.
Nothing to report. I will share, though, that I was able to go with Chad and Andy to Viramontes on Monday and see Norco's manure being offloaded of the trucks. And so I will probably be coming back with a report on our manure. So
it obviously smelled and looked better than anybody else's.
It's the only manure there, actually. So.
Councilmember Hoffman.
Thank you, Mayor. Report on the Western Community Energy, the meeting. The minutes that you're in front of the dais. Just to let you know, the overall opt-outs for all jurisdictions under the WC is only 4.93%, and there are actually people, 47 customers who are going totally 100% green plus plan. That's good for them. To date, the Western Community Energy has saved its customers an estimated 1.7 million on their utilities since we launched. Norco, the residents of Norco, like I said, are a little tough in buying into the program. We have a higher opt-out rate, but I told them we were a show-me city, like a bunch of Missourians, so it's going to be tough to sell. So a little bit also on the WCE, they did a flex alert and rotating outages program. And Brian, I'm going to get this to you, reference some of the points. With this heat will probably continue from what I'm looking at AccuForecast and NOAA, and we're into this for about another 2 weeks of high heat. So I know, John, it's the way it is. So anyway, I'll get you this. These are just flex points and things that we should be doing to reduce our energy consumption. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Newton.
Thank you, Mayor. Last Thursday, I just attended the CDA board meeting and the Chino Basin desalter. No outstanding items to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have our vector report. We have a new ingredient, or they have a new ingredient for insecticides and repellents called Newtkatone. It's a natural organic compound that smells like grapefruit, and it may repel and kill ticks, mosquitoes, and other biting pests. Next part. RTA, they have the youth ride RTA buses for free from August 2020 to June 2021. Anyone under 18 can ride free. Simply show a valid school ID, RTA youth card, California driver's license, or any state issued ID showing the rider is under 18. That's a good deal because they can go to the beach, they can go anywhere they want to go 24/7, and the buses all have chargers on them for your iPhones and all that, and it also has Wi-Fi. Okay, next item is RCTC. Excuse me. We voted at the meeting last week to approve this contract for that expansion of the 91 Freeway Westbound from Green River Road to the 241. This is going to start in October. It takes about a year, but this is adding one lane that will go from Green River to the 241, and it's for the people going the 241 traffic only. So that should help that jam up down there a little bit if they don't build some more houses between now and then and add cars. But that's all I have on my report. Thank you. Okay, item 2 is the City Council consent items. All items listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine and may be enacted by one motion. Prior to the motion to consider any action by the council, any public comments on any of the consent items will be heard. There will be no separate action unless members of the council or audience request specific items to be removed from the consent calendar. Items removed from the city council or from consent calendar will be separately considered under item number 3 on the agenda. So does anybody want to pull any items?
Aye.
What?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I also want to pull I and D as in David.
And which one, Ted?
And D
D
as in David and I as in Ida.
Okay, Kevin?
I have to recuse myself from I, so when it comes up, I'll not vote.
Okay, Robin? I have none. Do we have a motion to approve the remainder?
When it comes up, you'll leave.
Councilmember Grummeyer? Yes. Councilmember Hoffman?
Yes.
Councilmember Newton? Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Bash? Yes. Mayor Hanna?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimous.
Okay, item D, Ted, that's yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brian, I guess these are questions for you. They're actually going to put our electrical line in there
Yes,
to that?
that's a condition of this amendment to this agreement.
And I'm just curious, you put a value on everything else. What's the value of that line to us?
It's a good question because Councilman Newton asked me the same thing, and I would say it's probably somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000.
So that's a savings that we would get out of that.
Yeah, we will not have to put that line in later, which is in our long-term plans.
Good, that means I won't have to trench it.
That's very good. By the way, that's very hard digging right there. So.
Trust me, I know. And then, so that would be in addition to what they're going to pay us, the $40,000.
Currently, the agreement outlines they pay that currently right now, and that goes up by a 3% increase annually, and then that's already written into the agreement. This is just an amendment to allow them to bring the actual fiber optic into their building. For that, we have negotiated with them to provide us with that new electrical line as part of the improvement or public improvement.
Okay. And so we're not going to lose any vegetation, not lose any trees or anything like that?
No. And they'll have to submit drawings and plans to building and safety for that improvement.
Okay. And then finally, on that building, there was some damage to it or break-in issue on that. It's been a little, it hasn't not recently, but and do we have a good point of contact for that?
Yeah, well, Verizon is our point of contact, but they didn't respond.
No.
Yeah, we'll make sure.
We need to get that posted on that building so your staff isn't looking around for somebody.
Sure.
If no one else has anything else, I move to approve.
Just a clarification, Ted. It's conduit only. Does not include cabling. Correct, Brian?
No, they'll pull the power all the way from there.
Okay, they will. So that'll include the cabling also.
Yes. Yeah.
And part of our conversation was also that just because they had mentioned 2-inch conduit, that they have to get Edison approval on the conduit size.
Yeah, that was a note, and when we get into the working drawings, we'll make sure that they meet all those conditions, because it'll still have to have a plan check review for it.
Yeah.
The other thing that they will be doing is they will be putting a receptacle there for us to pick up later at that location, a junction box. So we undetermined at this time because we haven't got into design yet.
Thank you. That is an easement where we are, right, for Edison? Are we under that? So it shouldn't bother them because the trees are there.
It's just before the Edison easement.
Okay.
We will actually put our junction box into the slope, so we're outside of the easement.
Okay. I don't have anything further, Greg. If you don't have anything further, I move to approve.
I'm going to have a motion in a second.
Councilmember Grummeyer? Councilmember Hoffman? Councilmember Newton? Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Bash?
Yes.
Mayor Hanna?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimous.
Okay, next item, Ted, you and Greg both pulled item I. We'll let Greg, you start first.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess primarily start with Chad on not being a big fan of cash in lieu. I'd rather see the work done at the present time. But it also says here in the staff report, this fee not only included conservative construction costs, but an additional 20% for construction management and inspection. So I guess my concern is that $243,000 of in lieu fees that we're going to let run out for a period of 10 years that pick a topic if you want to say that the in lieu fee is the fee today. So if we say like a concrete curb is X amount of dollars per foot, what guarantees that in 10 years that fee is, the cost is going to be greater than the fee that we're collecting? So at a certain point, we're going to just start losing money on these in lieu fees. And so, I have problems with that, taking those public funds and just extending them out that long term. And then when we get to the point of improving Norconian Drive, and let's say that next year, we decide to move forward with that and start doing that street, we're backfilling, or we're also carrying a financial load of these in lieu fees that we don't have that immediate reimbursement. We're still going to be carried out 10 years. So I think with all of that, it just kind of gives me some heartburn with it. Like I said, I'd rather see you have a project, construct the improvements, and not going out on a basically, I'd mentioned earlier, it's a non-secured loan. We have no security on this $243,000 other than, hey, I'll give you $24,000 a year for 10 years and shake hands, and that's all it is. So I was just curious how, what some of your thoughts were on this, and where we are with improving the street, and just your feeling on the cash in lieu.
In general, I think we've talked about this before. I'm not a fan of cash in lieu either. We really don't allow it any longer, except for extreme situations. And again, as we became aware of this project and the church, and then learned about the long-standing stipulation they have to do half-street improvements, it was about a question of, okay, the church wasn't wavering from that obligation, but the concern is they didn't have the money to do it, and when it would be done. So we're still, it's sometime down the road when that might be. So in our discussions with the church, it was simply that we, as Public Works, in that existing requirement in the existing CUP, weren't willing to waive that or remove that in their application for a new CUP to expand their operation to match what they currently are doing now as far as the level of students and their activities. So the question was, they can't go forward to get the CUP to be in compliance because they can't build the improvement right now. And what we basically put onto them is come up with an alternative that might be palatable for the council to consider, for staff. And again, in lieu is an option. It's not my favorite. And the option was to do a 10-year payment plan, basically. So they were going to commit to the payment, and with the understanding is that we could, in theory, pull their CUP if they failed to pay at any time. And so it's a mechanism that said at some point it's going to go to the city council and they're going to have to approve it. It's a condition in their CUP that has been approved. So we have to come to some agreement on it in order to be in compliance with the CUP. So I do envision this is something that the council can modify and bring back to them, and we can go into discussion. So if you wanted to go with the shorter time period, maybe 5 years. The reality is I'm also looking at the fact that Norconian is sooner rather than later likely going to be fixed. And if it was fixed, that burden would be 100% on the city to do that. We can't force the school to pay the money to do that. At least in this scenario, even though it's going to be paid in the arrears, we still got something back for it, for our contribution, maybe in the next year or two when we finally move forward with fixing or rehabbing all of Norconian, that there at least is a contribution that's going to be provided towards it, even though it's not a lump sum now, it's something versus nothing. Way I looked at it, at least it's not the best scenario. Like I said, I'd rather just have them do the work, but that's been a problem for them, is they have repeatedly indicated they don't have that amount of money to properly rehab the half-street portion of the roadway that they need to do. So we mainly said, let's just put it forward and see what the council does or doesn't like about the proposal. But short of building it, this is what we came up with, is something we could stomach, for better words, and to chew on. And it's really going to be a question if council felt it was fair. Maybe, part of that is adding an annual percentage increase each year to the overall amount due. So it's counting for the increase factor of potential cost down the road.
Yeah. Before you go too much further, remember that this is the implementation of a condition of their granted conditional use permit. We don't really have the ability at this point to say, okay, we want different terms. I mean, you could turn it down, but that means that, I'm not even sure. The time to appeal the CUP is gone, but this 10-year deal was a part of that conditional use permit. This is really just implementation of that condition, and at least arguably they have a vested right in the CUP at this point, although they haven't probably spent any money to do that. But realistically, this is almost a ministerial act.
So who makes the deal, John, if it's not us? Planning Commission made the deal?
Yeah.
Subject to that approval.
I think that's correct. I guess we can take a look at the CUP language, but
because it says
the term.
I can read it for you. It says specifically, prior to issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall enter into a payment agreement with the City of Norco for the provision of street improvements along Norconian Drive that shall include, at a minimum, the following, which had those other items on it. So it doesn't preclude, in my way I've read this, and this is copy and paste from the actual CUP, that you could include other conditions.
Yeah, I think that this was just reflecting what was essentially the existing condition.
But typically, on any other project, cash in lieu is a lump sum deposit, and then it's held in a separate account that flags whenever that certain project comes up to look at the cash in lieu account.
Right.
In the perfect world. Okay. Like I said, I don't like making unsecured loans, and you also don't have any increase for cost increases over a period of 10 years. That's all I have to say at this point. Thank you.
Ted?
Thank you, Mayor. Most of us, I think, have taken the walk up there. So before I get into what Greg was talking about, one of the commissioners talked about Norconian, and I saw Norconian Drive on there on our 5-year CIP project listed for fiscal year 21-22 under Measure A. Is that still what you intend? I think you got $750,000 set aside for it.
It's in our CIP, but it's been in our CIP for 3 years. We've continually pushed it, mainly because we have had higher priorities as a department to do other locations as far as demand and need and use. We can honestly do the road at the discretion of the council if they want to make that the next priority project. Right now it's in the queue, as it's been in the queue for the last 2.5, 3 years. So I don't want to say it's for sure going to get done. It will depend on the money that's available and other priorities that the council may have. So I don't want to say it's going to happen, but it is in our CIP as an item that we've identified that could be done.
Okay, so it's there because that commissioner that night asked, and that we were going to wait 10 years on the final payment of this thing to get the Norconian Drive done. So that's what I asked. One of the things, and I'll admit, I'll agree with Greg, is that, we 243, the $24,000 a year they're going to pay on this isn't going to catch up to what it's going to cost us actually in the long term. I don't like in lieu of street fees. Didn't like them when I was on the planning commission. But things were done, and finally we quit doing that. The one thing about this case, and it's unique, because when Church on the Hill had it on the original CUP, and they requested it, they didn't follow up when they sold the property to Turning Point. So part of that problem stemmed from the owners not being honest with the people that, hey, the seller's not being honest with the buyers on what was going on and what was in that. A lot of it was that CUP was missed somewhere. It might have been missed by city staff. It might have been missed by...
Actually, I think that and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the property exchange actually was a quitclaim from the church that the prior owner just gave it to them. They thought, oh, this is great, we'll take it, without doing any other due diligence. It wasn't like it went through escrow or anything.
Well,
else.
and that's, like I said, this thing should have been handled. How long is the CUP originally, Chad?
Only 1982.
It was in the 80s, right?
Yeah, 1982.
1982. And nothing had been done with it. And so somewhere along the line, when we got information that things had changed, maybe city staff should have done something. I don't know. We weren't there in the 80s and 90s, but now we've got this thing that we have to deal with. Like I said 2 weeks ago, I thought I was impressed with the fact that the city had tried to, and with planning commission and the planning department had tried to work out something equitable for these people. I mean, the church business in some places is big business, and probably they're not. I think they're trying to do something good. But I just wanted to point that out on that. But my main concern was the Norconian. And the reason I bring that out is the liability, I guess, and John, this goes to you. If we don't improve Norconian and we leave it closed, that's one thing. If something happens in there to that schoolyard or that, or if we open it and we don't do a street that's engineered properly, and a car goes off and hits those portables, those school things, where's the responsibility? Where's our liability?
Well, if we open it, allow it to be used without it being improved, then certainly we have some potential liability.
Okay. Right, but if we don't open it and somebody still drives through there.
If it's closed and marked, then no, we don't have any liability.
Okay, I'm just concerned about that, but that's what I'm saying. A whole purpose of that in CUP was to fix Norconian years ago, and that was the only point. But I just like to see it continue on our CIP project and don't push it back anymore. That's my 2 cents. With that, unless Greg's got anything further. That I move to approve.
I have a motion and a second.
Councilmember Grummeyer? Yes. Councilmember Hoffman? Yes. Councilmember Newton?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Bash? Oh, he abstained. Oh, where I'm at today, sorry guys. Mayor Hanna?
Yes.
Motion passes with no with Councilmember Newton and Mayor Pro Tem Bash abstain.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to item 4, public comments. This is the time when persons viewing, wishing to address the city council regarding matters not on the agenda may be heard. Please email the city clerk. Please limit comments to 3 minutes or less. The Ralph M. Brown Act limits the city council's ability to respond to comments on the agendized matters at the time such comments are made. The city council shall not discuss or take action relative to any of the general public comments. Do we have any speaker cards, Madam Clerk?
I received one public comment since we've arrived, and I'll read that into the record.
Who was that from?
From Bonnie Slager.
Oh, okay.
And NHA and Rule would like to invite everyone to our candidates night on Thursday, September 17th. The location and time will be announced as soon as they are finalized. This is planned to be a live event with people in their cars, but the plans are not final as of yet. Thank you, Bonnie Slager, President, NHA. And that I have no further comment.
Okay, thank you. We'll close them. Then item 5 is legislative matters. No new evidence will be heard from the public as the public hearing has been closed regarding the items listed. Number A, ordinance second reading. John, is that yours? Huh?
Mr. Mayor, under discussion
Okay.
for the city clerk, under summary, it says the first reading of ordinance number 1061 was held August 5th, 2020, and was unanimously adopted by the city council. So I'm going to ask for a correction and ask what the vote was on the first reading.
The first reading was 3-2 with 2 voting no. And I will make sure that that gets corrected on this and also on the minutes.
Okay, so we had a, pardon me?
Now you need a motion.
Okay, need a motion. You make a motion, Greg? Did you make a motion? Okay,
No, he pointed out that he voted no.
I'll make the motion then. Have a motion and a second.
Councilmember Grummeyer? Yes. Councilmember Hoffman? Yes. Councilmember Newton? No. Mayor Pro Tem Bash? No. Mayor Hanna?
Yes.
Motion passes with Councilmember Newton, Mayor Pro Tem Bash voting no.
Okay, item 6 is the city council discussion items. Order of presentation for discussion items. Staff report presentation. Council questions of staff. Public speakers in favor, against, or neutral. Council discussion and action. And the first item is appointment to the Planning Commission by the City Council. City Clerk, this is yours.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Tonight before you, I have the commission appointments for the Planning Commission. Currently, we have 3 unscheduled vacancies, one on the Economic Development Advisory Council, Historic Preservation Commission, and Planning Commission. Requirements for becoming a commissioner or committee member is under Norco Municipal Code Chapter 2.22.040. You need to be a citizen of the United States, be a permanent resident of the city, be at least 18 years of age, take and file with the city clerk the oath required by Section 36507 of California Government Code, and no felony conviction. Excuse me. Public notice was released on August 3rd, 2020. Application deadline was August 12th, 2020. A total of 5 applications were received for Planning Commission only. The Historic Preservation Commission and Economic Development Advisory Council recruitment will remain open until applications are received. So we have not received anything as of today. Our applicants this evening are for the Planning Commission's one unscheduled vacancy is Jeff Shue, Mark Askey, Diane Collins, John Logan, and Richard Biesmer. And at this time, you have, we will have each one of the applicants that are here this evening speak before you, and you can ask questions of them. Once they are done, we will have a vote, which I've placed that ballot in front of you, and we hope to have an appointment. So I will start calling up each one of the applicants one by one. The first applicant to speak is Diane Collins.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Didn't expect to be here talking about this so soon. So last time I had a very nice prepared speech, and tonight I thought I would just speak from my heart, kind of. You all know me. You know that I have been active in preserving and protecting and growing and sustaining this town for over 10 years. And, you know, through my involvement with the Chamber of Commerce, managing it, through my involvement with the Norconian Foundation, and now as a restaurant owner here in town. I'm definitely committed to Norco and to growing it and growing it properly. And I think that that really starts at the Planning Commission. I've heard a lot of stories and have actually experienced myself a little bit of personal bias, and where Commission members bring their own personal feelings into their decision-making process, and I don't think that that is something that is appropriate in a planning commission. It's not personal, it's about the city itself. And actually, after I experienced that, I mentioned it to one of you, and the reply was, well, we need better applicants. And right then and there is when I decided to submit my application for the Planning Commission. You know, I may not have some of the experience some of these other gentlemen have that with being on a planning commission or in the construction industry or even in real estate, but I have the passion and the knowledge of Norco, and you can learn the details. It's kind of like at the restaurant, you hire the person that's the right person for the job, because you can teach just about anybody how to make a pizza. So the bottom line is that I'm here. I know that, you know, when I was told that we need better candidates for the Planning Commission, you're going to have a tough decision tonight, because from what I've read, you have some good candidates. I hope that you will consider me the best candidate. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane.
The next candidate is Jeff Shue.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, thank you again for the opportunity to speak in front of you. I was here about a month ago, and I think I squandered my 3 minutes in front of you babbling about my kind of professional background and the kind of presenting as my bona fide. But since then, I've had a wise someone present a question to me that I felt was really insightful. And to kind of paraphrase, the question is the relevant professional experience the most important thing for a member of the Planning Commission? And that caused some soul searching for me. And ultimately, I had to admit to myself that it's helpful, but it's only a tool. Like Diane said, I want to feel that given the opportunity and the passion, that anybody can learn the tools. Now, I may have a little bit of a head start in terms of understanding the things, but really what it boils down to is that I see the members of the commission to be the safeguard for the character and the ideals of the town. So in that sense, I have to admit to myself that the most important factor then is the love of the town. So I've lived in a lot of places in my life, both here in the States and abroad, and I've considered many of them home. But Norco really holds a special place for me in that it's the first place where my heart really resonated with the city, with the town, and I really longed for the opportunity to raise my family in this environment. Now, my family's on the verge of growing by one again in this October, and I relish the idea of being able to raise and grow my family in a place where I feel that would be conducive to what I consider to be traditional family values. I'm very new to the town. I be safe in saying that I am probably the person who's newest to the town in this entire room. But one of the things is that I love discovering more things about the city. This morning I read Councilman Bash's story about the Knott's Berry Farm that was here, and I'm like, wow, I drive by that every day. It's great to discover these things. And as our son and sons soon grow, I like the idea that there's going to be plenty of opportunity for them to learn a different way of living, that it's not just through technology and stuff like that. There is a way to earn through working with your hands through an agriculture program that's throughout the city. So really, it's it's an entire encompassing feel. I like to joke about this because my wife and I, we moved here from Long Beach. And when we were living in Long Beach, one of the things that came up was the if we won the lotto scenario. And we like to talk about, okay, if we won the lotto, we want to move to somewhere big, buy a ranch, be able to have all these things. And since we moved to Norco, that discussion has changed completely. If we won the lotto, we'd stay at the house that we're at. We'd probably build a better barn in the back, we'd renovate the house, but we have no intention of living. We love this place. And so that's why I want to be able to speak to you guys today and just tell you that's where my heart is. I want to be able to serve. I want to be a part of the group that helps preserve the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Next applicant is John Logan.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time tonight. This is my first time in front of you, and I wasn't expecting to be here tonight, but tried to put together a few thoughts that I wanted to share with you. My family and I have lived in Norco for almost 6 years now, and I do realize by Norconian standards that is a very short period of time. But we truly love living here, and I felt like it was time for me to get more involved in the community. I have 25 years of experience as a business leader for several major corporations. I currently run a large distribution center for a very large medical supply company. I have responsibility for a $34 million operating budget, supporting over $700 million in sales, and I employ over 500 employees at this distribution center. So I have a very deep business knowledge in my past 25 years. In addition to that, I am a licensed real estate agent. Both my wife and I are affiliated with the Keller Williams here in Norco, so we do have a relationship and understandings of real estate and markets in the area, and I feel like that can be of benefit as well. So, you know, why John Logan? Well, there's a number of reasons. Number one, I feel like my strong business acumen, my relationships within the community can bring a significant benefit. I'm also an amateur historian, and I have a bachelor's degree in U.S. history. I'm also a fiscal conservative, and I believe these attributes really can bring significant value to the Planning Commission, as I would seek to promote projects to this council that would not only preserve the culture of Norco, but also be financially responsible. I'm also very energetic and enthusiastic. I thoroughly enjoy doing research, and I feel that all of these characteristics will be apparent in the work that I do and will greatly benefit the city of Norco. So I really thank you for your time, and wanted to share with you those thoughts. Thank you very much, all.
Thank you.
And the last applicant, Mark Askey.
Evening, Mr. Mayor, council, staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here tonight. The lady was right. You've got some good applicants. My name is Mark Askey. I live here in Norco with my wife and 4 of our 5 children. One of them has escaped and moved up to Iowa. But I've got my youngest, 2 girls in high school at Norco High, and my son at Norco College. So it's the community is very important to me. It's something that I believe very strongly in service. When I graduated high school, I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grow up. I'm still not sure, but I joined the Navy to see the world, and was in service to my country then and have been pretty much ever since, mostly for the federal government, either directly as an employee or separately as a consultant, including 10 years with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, where I worked disasters all around the country, helping communities recover from some of the most difficult, challenging times that they ever faced. And it's all about service. It's all about supporting the communities and supporting the agencies that were in those communities. And everywhere I've lived, I've tried to be involved, I've served on a city planning commission before in Richland, Washington for 2 years. So I understand the importance of the role. I understand the importance of the planning commission to the council and being able to depend on the fact that they are being diligent and performing their roles in advising the council in a respectable and good manner. And I understand that the need to have good people do that, and I think you've got no shortage of them here tonight. So whichever direction you go, I think we'll be in good hands. And I just want to be in service, and I appreciate this opportunity to introduce myself to all of you, because if not this, I'm sure I'll find something else to do in the community that will bring me back here again. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Anybody have any questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If I can have council to please vote, and I'll collect your ballots.
I only used one page.
Okay.
Voted for somebody else.
We've had two really good applicant pools, and I'm sorry we can only have one picked, and I hope you will volunteer for other things if you don't get in tonight, please. We need volunteers. The city operates on volunteers. The last two have been very difficult, but there's lots of things to do. You can sign up. Brian Petrie can tell you how to do it. You can sign up for the volunteer pool here in the city of Norco. There's veterans committees. There's all kinds of things that you can get involved in. So I don't know how this is going to go, but please volunteer.
Okay, council, if you can, I'm glad I did give you a second sheet in front of you. You'll now be choosing between Jeff Shue and Mark Askey. We did have a tie. Thank you, council. And tonight you have appointed Mark Askey to the Planning Commission. Thank you all for your applications.
Thank you, folks, for coming and applying. Don't give up.
To Mr. Askey, you will be notified beginning tomorrow with some more information via email on what will be happening next. Thank you.
Okay, move on to item B. Item 6B related to the Hamner Avenue widening project has been continued to the September 2nd, 2020 City Council meeting. There will be no discussion on this item this evening. All right, item 7 is public hearings. Order of public hearing is staff presentation. Council questions of staff. Open public hearing. Public speakers in favor, against, and neutral. Close the public hearing. And council discussion and action. So, item 7 is a zone code amendment, and that is the planning director. Welcome to our town, Alma.
No, that was the one that's continued.
Do what?
Yes, till September 2nd.
Good guy. They're pretty good about getting back.
Yes, okay. Yes, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, this is agenda item 7A, and this is what's before you is Zone Code Amendment 2020-05, Specific Plan Amendment 91-02, Amendment number 11, and Specific Plan 9901, Amendment number 9. And what this is, what's being brought before you is the intent of this is to modify our existing accessory dwelling unit ordinance in an effort to be compliant with state law. In addition to that, the specific plan amendments are being presented to the codes. Our municipal code and specific plans currently allow caretaker dwellings, and the intent is to make, right now they are allowed with a conditional use permit, and the intent is to make them as permitted uses by right, but subject to the regulations of an accessory dwelling unit, or what is known as an ADU. Just to give you a little bit of background, when we adopted our housing element for the period of 2014-2021, our housing element, one of the follow-up items that was included when our housing element was certified is that we go back and review our ADU ordinance. And basically what we're doing tonight is basically coming into reviewing that as was stated in our housing element. And the intent of the ADU ordinance to be in compliant with state law is to basically make provision for affordable housing in the state of California and subsequently in our each municipality. I won't get too detailed because you do have the ordinances in front of you. However, I'd like to point out that the Planning Commission did review these ordinances at their meeting on July 29th. One of the things that we did receive was a letter from, let's see here, and I believe it was provided from a nonprofit organization which is called the California for Home Ownership. That letter came in too late, so some of the comments that were in there weren't addressed in time for the Planning Commission. However, they, with the help of our city attorney, they have been, my understanding is they have been addressed. No, they have not.
We received a letter from an attorney, Matthew Gelton, from the Californians for Home Ownership, which suggested some modifications. Staff considered the input from his letter and began drafting some modifications. After some consideration, it seems that rather than having you adopt that without additional public input, and frankly without input from HCD, that we're just suggesting that you go forward with the ordinance as approved by the Planning Commission.
Okay.
We will, when it comes to that point in the public hearing, we will read into the record the letter from the Californians for Arm Ownership.
Okay, so just not to go too much in detail, because you do have the ordinance in front of you, but just to point out some highlights. The ordinance, what it addresses is basically allowing accessory dwelling units in these zones that allow residential uses. And before, the way the ordinance was written, it was only allowed in our R1 and in our R3 zones, and now it will be allowed in the A1 zone and the specific plans that allow residential homes. And we do have some bullet points there, and I will go over those briefly. As far as the ADU ordinance, a single property with an existing or proposed primary dwelling can have both an ADU, attached or detached, and a junior ADU. Applications for ADUs, before, at one time they allowed discretionary approval, now they do not. They basically now will be subject to just a building permit, provided that they meet all the requirements that have been outlined in your ordinance. The other thing is that approval in ADU or JADU is done at staff level, and we have 60 days to basically approve or an application or take action on it. The inclusion of the ADU or JADU must comply with the city's 40% coverage and be included in the lot coverage calculation. The addition of an ADU or junior ADU must still preserve open animal keeping area. So the way the ordinance is written, is that when the ADU is reviewed at the building permit, they have to show that they can still make provision for an open animal keeping area for those lots that do not have a PACA, and that's an open animal keeping area, and that's based on the number of animal units that are allowed on the property. The maximum allowed sizes for an ADU, the maximum allowed size is for an attached, for a one-bedroom unit, the higher of 850 square feet, or 50% of the primary dwelling for a two-bedroom unit, the higher of 1,000 square feet, or 50% of the primary dwelling, and this is for one that's attached. For a detached one, 1,200 square feet of livable area, and 500 square feet for a junior ADU. Let's see. The ADUs or junior ADUs can be rented separately from the primary residence, but cannot be sold separately. The parking requirement is one space per unit, and the parking space doesn't have to be covered. It can be, all they have to do is basically show that they can accommodate a vehicle on the site. Let's see. The maximum side and rear yard setback requirement for an ADU is 4 feet. The side and rear yard setbacks for other structures, including the graduated setback for accessory building, do not apply. The ADUs are subject to payment of application fees, basically for a building permit, and those ADUs that are greater than 750 square feet are subject to impact fees that are adopted by the city. ADUs that are less than 750 square feet are exempt from impact fees. For ADUs 750 square feet or greater, the impact fees are proportional to the relationship of the ADU to the primary dwelling. As far as junior ADUs, cannot be rented for periods of less than 30 days. The rental of ADUs on a short-term basis is similar to the primary dwelling as to whether it is allowed or not. Owner occupancy for a lot with a junior ADU is required with the owner living in the primary dwelling or a junior ADU. Owner occupancy is not required for an ADU. And as I indicated earlier, as far as the amendments to our specific plan and portion of the A1 zone and the AE zone, there is provision in here to amend the code to move the, a caretaker dwelling from being a conditionally permitted use to a permitted use, and to make those subject to the requirements of the accessory building ordinance that was presented to you in this application. And with that, I will conclude and answer any questions.
Who wants to start with the questions? Greg?
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, Alma.
Hi.
So on the fees, impact fees, are the TUMP fees and school fees included? That ADU would have, do they pay school fees and TUMP fees?
My understanding is that they do pay the school fees. I'd have to look a little into that. TUMP fees, I don't believe that they are subject to TUMP fees.
Okay. And that,
Yeah, and in addition, they aren't fees that we assess anyway, so they don't need to be addressed.
we
in
don't
the
assess
ordinance.
the
No.
TUMP fees. We just tell them, you go pay them.
Correct.
Yeah, and we don't assess school fees either.
Correct.
The school district does, right.
So what's the
that's-
answer?
The answer is, I believe that Alma's correct. On the other hand, the answer is between the school district and the rules that the state applies to the school district, and the
TUMP is...
and
Okay. So we're just impact fees only.
Yes, no TUMP fees.
No TUMP fees.
On the where we have dedicated PACAs, okay, that one of the requirements on a PACA is that there is a 12-foot straight access from the street to the PACA. Is that still going to remain?
Yes, for
With
the,
the-
oh, absolutely.
With this new variation
Absolutely.
in setbacks and things like that?
Yeah, for the lots that have existing primary animal keeping areas or the PACA, the existing specific plan for those that have the PACA, you have to have a 15-foot access to it.
Right, and a 12-foot gate.
Yeah, at minimum.
So that can't be encroached into?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
I will make sure.
Okay. And then conversely, on where there's a non-dedicated animal keeping area, we've still, or planning still has tried to maintain that as a straight and clear access. Can that now be encroached by these ADUs?
Well, that's an interesting concept because it does say that the ADUs can come as close as 4 feet to. However, in our review of the building permit, that we will look and see to make sure that they do provide the required open animal keeping area. We will make sure that the open animal area is accessible via the at least a 15-foot access to it. So that in other words, in order for the open animal keeping area to be functional, it has to be accessible. So we will definitely look into that as well.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're kind of clear on that. Absolutely having heartburn on all of this. The 4-foot side yard setbacks. How does that relate to the setbacks on a corner lot? You can kind of help me out. With a primary resident on a corner lot, it's like 35 feet, and if I'm reading these setbacks correctly, that means you could build an ADU 4 foot all the way up to the PL at a corner on a corner lot.
That's a good question. If you look at the ordinance, it does address that specifically.
Okay.
Let me find it real quick.
Point me to that page then.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been a good question, Alma, if you already provided the answer in your staff report.
Oh, let me find it.
Because I didn't have it highlighted, so
yes, it's item. It's item. Let me see. It's item. It's page 5. If you look at the ordinance, page 5.
Okay, page 5.
Yeah, page 5 of the ordinance, item J. It says it starts where it's sitting. It says subject to the setback requirements of 5D of this section, the detached accessory dwelling unit may not be located within the area between the front property line and the line parallel and touching to the back of the primary residence. In other words, this is just basically saying that it has to be behind the primary residence. On a corner lot, the unit may not be located in the side yard adjacent to the street within the area between the street side property line and a line parallel to the most distant part of the property dwelling. So basically, it can't be closer than the house is to the street side.
Okay.
And generally speaking, that is at least 15 feet from the side.
Or greater than on the corner.
Yes, correct.
Okay, I apologize for missing that one. And then, just lastly for now, is on the parking requirements that are within a half mile of a bus route. How will we determine that half mile? Well, I guess the Berwyn bus routes are Hamner Avenue and River Road primarily?
Hamner Avenue, yeah, and the new one will come down River Road and they go to the train station down in Corolla.
Okay. So, for the most part, let's just say Hamner Avenue. How would we determine the half mile?
It would definitely be, well, it's something that
where the bus stop is.
Yes, it would be measured to, we would find the locations of the bus stops, and then depending on the property that's requesting the ADU, it's very easily determined measuring from where we find the location of the bus stops.
Okay, I guess what I'm trying to get to is that it's not as the crow flies, but it would be, you're not going to be able to walk through your neighbor's house and over the flood channel and across the freeway to get to it.
Of course not.
You're going to have to walk down to the corner and find that you're going to be greater than a half mile. So
yeah, they're
more than likely. Yeah.
The only zigzags they make on the bus route is they come down Hamner and they get off at the community center back there.
Okay.
They come over here and they go around to the senior center, and then they go into the college. They go on down to the train station, same way on the way back, but now with the new development going in on the Palomino Business Park and over here where Goldie's is going in.
Right.
I turned those in as possible bus stops, so they're already figured out what they'll do when those open up. They'll come off of Hamner and do just like they do going to senior center. They'll come in and go around and go by that place and then back on to Hamner and down to the next stop.
So then also any of the residential areas that are close to the college would fall into that.
Yeah, and that would
half mile.
That would possibly be the only ones, because they used to have bus stops on 6th Street, but then they took them out, so there's no buses that go past, go back. There's no buses that go east of Hamner.
And keep in mind that requirement will come into place if they wouldn't want to provide the one parking space on site. Generally speaking, it's just a matter of providing a parking space where you can park.
Right.
It doesn't have to be covered, and if they don't have the room for it,
then they park in the,
or they don't
like
want to
everybody
provide
on
it.
this side, that side of town, where they're all parked in the city right away. Which is another problem. But I'm trying to grasp for some straws that I'll hold for discussion later. That's all the questions I have right now. Thank you, Mayor.
Robin?
Obviously, that is statutory language. Otherwise, you wouldn't be seeing it.
What's that?
The 1/2 mile from public bus stop, transit public bus stop.
That's what it's stated in the report.
Yes, but and what I'm saying is that's what the statute requires.
Right.
State law. That's the only reason it's in our ordinance.
Yeah, I understand that, but it's how do you get to the half mile?
And the city's position would be that it's whatever a route is it's not, as you suggest, as the crow flies. It's if you have to walk a half mile this way and a half mile this way, that's 1 mile.
Right.
It's not across half mile.
Thank you, John.
Robin?
Alma, I had a question on the 4-foot setbacks, because as I read the ordinance, I don't interpret it that there would have to be access to the open animal keeping area beyond the 4 foot. And so as I'm looking at this and as I was trying to figure it out, for example, if I'm thinking an animal rescue, a horse goes down, there's an evacuation, the minimum, a gator, which they use for in and out, is 60 inches wide. So is there in the ordinance, Mr. Harper, the way that it's written, flexibility for our planning department to make that interpretation that there needs to be clear and open access to the animal keeping area? Or is somebody's lawyer going to read this, no, you said 4 foot, and that's it?
I expect that's going to be the debate. Unfortunately, again, that's statutory language as well. That.
Can you tell me what Assembly Bill the 4 foot requirement is in by chance?
Off the top of
because I was looking for some of that today.
No, but I can get it for
if you can look it up for me or let me know later. And does, with the statutory language of the 4 foot, because we are allowed to keep the animal keeping area, do we have the flexibility to, at minimum, change it to the 60 inches or whatever?
That's actually one of the criticisms of our ordinance that the California Homeowners Association has. That they don't believe that even as it's drafted, that we have the ability under state law to do what you're suggesting. But that's a position that we're going to continue to hold.
Well, I was going to say, because then we're giving the state the right to take away our animal keeping areas then.
Right.
The way I see it. So we can argue it, I mean, either way, but as far as I'm concerned, if we're going to, we have the right as a local jurisdiction to have open animal keeping areas, but then the state comes in and says, well, you only have to require 4 foot access. That essentially negates having an open animal keeping area because you cannot access it in case of an emergency. So.
Yes, all those things are right. Unfortunately, I mean, we're forced to adopt it. The downside to the city of not adopting these regulations that comply with state law is that the much more restrictive regulations which are set forth in the statute are the ones get applied. So we have no ability to do any of the things that we've discussed here.
My question of
the state and the city are just going in opposite directions.
So my question of, we can't modify our ordinance to reflect 60 inches instead of 48?
6 feet. We need 6 feet.
You need 6 feet?
If the gator's 60 inches, we need
60.
We need clearance on each side. So we do use that gator hauling stuff back to the back.
Yeah, the answer is literally no. That said, if you do, I don't know what happens other than somebody comes to you and applies for an ADU that doesn't comply with the 4 feet, and we get to litigate it.
Well, what if ours said 6 feet? And
it's not consistent with the state law is the answer. I mean, unfortunately, the state law doesn't take into account, and we've had this discussion 100 times here, doesn't take into account cities which either have animal keeping issues or are more rural in nature. That this organization from Los Angeles, their mindset is providing for more housing in already crowded urban areas, not understanding that that is not Norco, and that most of the suggestions that they made, we don't comply with state law, are things which are, as a practical matter, given the purpose and activities of Norco, shouldn't apply to Norco. But the state law is a state law.
Well, we ought to just get the governor.
So what we will presumably do is, I mean, that one of the advantages, one of the reasons for the 4-foot setback is that most lots in Los Angeles, San Francisco are small. So that 4 feet is significant. In Norco, that's generally speaking not the case. And so we will leverage in every possible way the siting of the ADU to meet our standards. I mean, I can't imagine that there's going to be anybody that's going to stand up and say, my God, I want that 4 feet, even though I could have it 6 feet or 8 feet. Why would you want to be that close to the adjacent property in Norco? And it impact your, I mean, still most of the people that own the larger properties in Norco are interested in animal keeping. Even if they're going to build an ADU, which we don't get many applications for, they're going to build it for purposes which are different than you do in Los Angeles or urban areas. It's going to be more, you know, the family mother-in-law type situation. And even though the literal application of the law would allow them to do that, I expect that it's not going to be in their best interest as animal keepers or Norco residents. So what we're going to do is, to the extent we can, affect siting so that it continues to allow animal keeping. Those that have the PACA, which is recorded, I think our argument is much better. Those that don't, I mean, there aren't that many to begin with anymore, but those that don't, we will use whatever leverage we can to have them record a PACA, move the site, the ADU, wherever it's most appropriate in terms of animal keeping. I mean, that's about all we can do. And I'm more afraid of putting something in the ordinance which is clearly not in compliance with the law, which is just going to draw attention to it and is not defensible if it's ever litigated.
Okay. Another question on the parking and how is that enforced and by who? So I know in my neighborhood there is parking on the street because there's not adequate parking in the yard because of garages being built into living areas and those types of things. So I guess I have two questions. Number one, who enforces the parking and how is that done? And then the second question would be, this ordinance passes, those places in town where we know there are already converted garages and all of that, are they grandfathered in because nothing was ever done before, or does this ordinance apply to those places that have already made those conversions as far as setbacks and parking and those types of things?
As far as the parking enforcement, when site plans will come in for review of the ADUs, we have to make sure that they show provision for parking on site. As far as enforcing it, I guess the best way would be, I mean, if we get a complaint and they're not parking in their designated spot.
And unfortunately, as we all know, that parking on a public street is permissible. The only regulation that a city can adopt is either red stripe it or 72 hours.
And to answer your question on those portions of houses that have been maybe converted to without permits, they're not grandfathered in. They would have to be able to legalize it. They would have to come in and start the process to see if they can legalize it formally into an ADU to make it permitted. So no, they would not, just because they were maybe existed for a while, if they were never converted with appropriate permits, no, they would not be grandfathered in.
Okay. So yeah, that's it. Thank you, Alma.
Kevin?
I have a couple of questions. So I too am concerned about the 4-foot setback and about the parking. I had questions. It was a good question. I do understand that one of the nice things that's occurring is people were at a low rate were living in garages and they're being evicted, and they're now being legalized and they're charging 3 to 4 times the amount of money. So congratulations to Sacramento. This will not develop into low-income housing. I read here where it says intent and purpose, and it says the intent of state regulations regarding accessory dwelling units while maintaining the rural and low-density character of Norco's residential neighborhoods. how are we going to do that?
Do the best we can.
So I think we just need to scratch that out. And I'm not kidding. By the way, just so you know, I know you've done a lot of work. I am not going to vote for this. I realize, I totally get we're supposed to, but I'm not. I have a question. Accessory dwelling units, junior accessory dwelling units may be rented separate from the primary resident, but may not be sold otherwise conveyed and separately from primary residence. Mm-hmm. How will we enforce that? In other words, how do we, I guess, title and deed and all that kind of stuff? I'm just trying to...
Well, so in order to do that, it'd have to be, as a practical matter, 2 separate lots, and it'd have to be recorded.
So what's to stop somebody from coming into the city?
Can't divide it without our permission.
Okay, but at some point, permission can be given. In other words, you could have somebody who has an acre, they decide to build one of these ADUs, and they could come to a future city council with new people and go, oh, well, that's a good idea. And this could literally, you could actually split a lot with these 2 properties. I'm just a question.
Well,
this is...
I mean, that's theoretically, I suppose, but if that happens, the other concerns you've expressed really become pretty much irrelevant, because you have a council that thinks that half-acre lots and a lot of houses are a great deal.
And we've had them, John.
Yeah.
We've had them. Okay, so the lot coverage, 5B, number 4, all exceeding and proposed buildings, including an accessory unit, shall not exceed the lot coverage requirement of an underlying zone. Right now, our lot coverage is 40%?
It's in the A1 zone, it's 40% of the flat pad.
Right.
Basically, and that includes pools.
So it can't go to 45% or... So in other words, if they build a house plus 2 units, it can't exceed the 40.
Correct. If all, taking into account all structures, including the house, the pool, coping on the pool, any other accessory buildings, we incorporate all of that in the lot coverage, and the unit would count also in the lot coverage. However, it's and John could correct me if I'm wrong. If they exceed the lot coverage, the city has to, a minimum, have to allow, is it 800 square feet? At a minimum, we have to at least allow an 800 square foot as accessory dwelling
So
unit.
even if it exceeds the lot coverage, we would have to allow the 800 square foot building?
That's my understanding.
So we no longer have lot coverage requirements. Parking spaces for accessory building are not required to be covered within a garage. You know, up in the hills, we already have a lot of rentals. They built, the dirty secret was those are compartment houses. They're designed for 2 and 3 families. So basically, if you put housing units inside of all those garages, sometimes 3 garages, you just can park on the street. You don't have to replace them, because I see elsewhere it says that you don't have to replace. Okay. The number of required spaces for accessory dwelling unit, got that one. Parking, Robin actually covered a lot of that stuff. The parking, so if we happen to ever get a bus stop like on 6th Street, then that would become in other words, if they start stopping along 6th, that'll be a transit bus stop situation.
That appears to be how it's defined in the statute.
Okay, I'm just this isn't for me. This is for people I'm hoping are watching to understand that when they run for council, this is what you're going to be facing. This is the Alamo. No parking requirement of an accessory dwelling unit is part of a proposed or existing primary unit. Again, parking was good. Exterior, you covered that. The exterior materials, colors, roof patch, and architecture shall match the primary unit. Yet the person that started all this had a friggin' trailer. So is this a state requirement?
No, that's ours.
So that's something we're adding, so that...
That's something which,
okay.
I don't know, it could have been required when the trailer was installed.
But it wasn't.
But it wasn't.
But it wasn't. Did we have that on the books?
I have no idea.
I thought there was something on there that...
Remember, the one we're talking about actually, I think, we're not naming names, but
I might.
it was not an ADU, it was a caretaker unit.
No, I understand. I get that.
And the caretaker unit was subject to a CUP, and it didn't have requirements like it has to match, or
Right.
because it's a temporary use.
So had we had this in place, that requirement would have been put in place, or somebody from Los Angeles would have sued us.
If we
had had this in place, you have to match.
Yes. I think I understand your question. That if the application for the caretaker unit had been made under this ordinance, the one which was approved would not have met the code. A new one under this ordinance would have to match the primary residence.
So, for example, I have the first legal caretaker unit literally in the city of Norco, and it semi-matches my house. So I, as an example, and I'm not going to do this, I will leave it a caretaker unit on almost 3 acres. So I could actually convert that if I wanted to. What would the process be for me just to walk in and just say I'm converting, or?
Well, actually, remember we're talking about 2 different ordinances.
No, I understand, but prompted this is a CUP going to a legal.
Yeah, and the caretaker units, as we call them now, still exist in the code if you adopt the new code, but there's no CUP requirement. They're functionally under the ADU standards.
So I would just, okay, all right, that's kind of answered. Accessory dwelling units shall not exceed 16 feet or the height level of the tallest legal structure on a lot. I live next door to a 24-foot high building, 24 feet. So they would have to either build, they could go to that 24 feet, or they'd have to go to the height of the house, which is 12 feet. Which would they have to do?
And the position of the statute probably is that they are allowed a maximum of 16 feet under any.
That is correct.
So just 16 feet.
16 feet. Yeah.
But what does it mean when it says whichever is less? So it goes.
Right.
So okay.
We haven't changed.
Okay.
We haven't changed anything.
Accessory units shall not be considered a new residential unit for the purposes of calculating connection fees or capacity fees for water and sewer. It doesn't have a separate. So in other words, they don't have to re-meter them, right, Alma? It'll go through the existing meter?
That is correct. However, if it's a detached structure, it will be required to be, per the way the ordinance is written, it will have to be metered separate for water usage.
For water usage?
Yes.
And not for electric?
It doesn't have to be. I mean, they can, but they don't have to.
Okay. Kitchen requirements. Parking, no additional parking is required beyond the already required primary dwelling. That's for the junior accessory building. I did find it interesting, but we don't have any place where we have a CC&R where there's any place in Norco. Mm-hmm. Now, my question is, what about the LMDs? Do the LMDs, because here it says, and John, help me with this, codes, covenants, and restrictions that either effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict construction, blah, 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 shall be void and unenforceable if somebody applies for this. So LMDs don't.
Yep.
Correct.
So in other words...
That's the intent of the state.
Okay, got it. The accessory dwelling or junior accessory dwelling is compatible with the design of the main building and the surrounding neighborhood in terms of height, architectural style. And so, for example, in the bluffs and in the hills, you have sections that are very distinct architectural. Those secondary units have to be incompatible with those.
That's what the ordinance, which was drafted by the Planning Commission, said. It's the contention of
That's one of the things
he's letter writer that we can't require that.
And then this is my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Compliance with general plan. An accessory dwelling unit and or junior accessory dwelling unit which conforms to the standards of this section shall not be considered to exceed the allowable density for a lot upon which it is located and shall be deemed to be a residential use which is consistent to the existing general plan and land use designation for the lot. The very act of putting an accessory building in somebody's backyard violates our general plan.
And the state is saying...
Oh, I get what the state's saying.
Mm-hmm.
Basically what the state is telling is our children, you can't afford to buy a house. It was so much easier for the older people. And so your goal in life should be to live in somebody's backyard. Congratulations. And you're going to pay through the nose to do that. They're going to impose basically the will of the state and overturn. We started zoning Norco in 1948. And year after year, people fought. And we're being told by people whose communities are rat holes. They're rat holes. And we're being told how to run our cities. And the truth of the matter is I would put my city above most of the cities in the state of California right now, and I deeply resent it. So anyway, as I said, you guys have worked so hard on this, but I can't vote for this, John. I'm sorry, I can't. I know we're going to have to pass it. I know we're going to have to do this stuff, but I can't vote for this. I'm not going to sit on a council, or I'm not going to be the person who's lived in this town since 1961 and have some idiot trying to do social engineering telling me how to run a city, and that I have to destroy literally the last city in the state of California by law you build on a half acre. Because when this is gone, it's gone. There's no more. I ran on the principle of protecting large lots, and if I'm eventually forced to, I probably will, because I won't want the state statutes, but I have a hope that somehow, some way, we're going to be able to fight this. I know I'm a fool, but the truth of the matter is, there's the old saying that the only battles worth fighting are the lost causes. So I'm going to choose to fight the lost cause. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay. Alma, you said something about utilities.
Mm-hmm.
So they do not have to have a separate utility hookup for their water and their gas?
Not if it's attached to. They have the option. They can do either. But if it's a detached structure, the way their code is written, the only thing that we can require, and the only thing we're going to require is that it be metered separately for water.
Correct. So, but I know what our code says. Mm-hmm. But we've already had this discussion about the letter from this group. Are we in compliance with the way the legislators up there in Sacramento did this one-size-fits-all law? That are we, John? Can we require a separate water connection, utility connection for any of this stuff? I know they said no on sewer,
right?
But it is allowed, so we can.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just trying to.
If it's detached. If it's detached.
Detached. What I'm trying to do is at least we get back some funds from having the extra meter in the meter service, the water meter service that we have, and utilities and stuff. So otherwise, it's a nightmare. Okay, so that makes sense. Robin brought up parking, and I guess this goes back to from what I understand, and Robin, your street is a mess there. We don't allow, and I don't know how we're doing this. Most of our street parking is supposed to be parallel to the street. For some reason, there's folks on his neighbors too across the street, and I'll pick on them. They perpendicular park. And on Temescal, perpendicular park. To fit in all these units. If we have to go through with this mess, and I'm like Kevin, I'm not for it either, then we need to strengthen up our street, correct? It has to be codes that say no perpendicular parking. And that's something that, and I know it's not your thing, but we need to fix this. So we stop this. Because when this mess was written up in Sacramento, and initially when it came out, 2016, and then we kind of him-hawed around on it. And now it's, when they tighten it up for 2020, we're sitting here, most communities allow parking on both sides of the street. We don't. We got a horse trail on that side. You can't park on that side. So we've already limited this. We had the potential, and you can answer me right or wrong, that there could be, because of our half-acre lot minimum, how many of these things can be approved on one street? You don't have an answer because I don't have an answer because of the lot.
Look at the parking on Sierra between 5th and 4th.
So, all right, so that, now, I'm addressing the parking thing. Because of the ADUs, don't we have anything in our code that says we're not supposed to have flag lots?
That's correct.
We're essentially building flag lots, correct?
No, not.
I know, because it's a single lot.
Yes, that's correct.
It is, in theory, it is the same thing. It's a flag lot. Because you got a house in the front, and we're allowing a house in the back. And God help the deputies and the firemen go and respond to them. And that's why they should have been. That's why this thing doesn't make sense. Okay, so this is nothing but approving flag lots. Essentially putting an ADU behind another house. Correct?
Well,
you can say yes or no, Alan. It's okay. It is. I mean, it is essentially what we're doing.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess all those folks, Berwyn included, that fought real hard for the city charter, this thing can't even be enforced, can it? It doesn't. Our city charter means nothing to this. The protection of the animal keeping to large lots and homes doesn't make any difference, does it? You speak up, John. The camera want people to hear it.
Nope.
Nope. The court said nope, didn't they? They overrode everything that generations of Norconians have fought to protect, just like Kevin said, by overriding our city charter. Things that make us unique is our city charter, correct?
Yes. I mean, and it's not just Norco, frankly, that there are bills before the state legislature now which functionally shift land use planning from local agencies, cities, to Sacramento.
Yep. Thank you, progressives. You mentioned the PACAs, and in our little letter we got, those guys, they don't like PACAs. They don't like animal keeping areas because they're doing it. And I noticed it was unique on their open animal area and other similar standards without providing the exception for an 800 square foot. So in other words, just like Alma said, it doesn't matter. Even though a PACA is deeded, it's part of the deed on the property. So they're over allowing an ADU on your property, even though you have a deeded PACA. This overrides that?
Remember, what you're reading from is the views of a lawyer who has a
I understand, but I'm asking you because
our position would be no. But on the other hand, Kevin just read you a provision from the statute which says that as to CC&Rs and everything else, this overrides them. So the argument is somebody who wants to encroach just because of the 800 square. Well, I mean, I can't imagine that this is going to be the minimum 800 square feet is going to be much of an issue too many times given Norco's lot sizes. That's an issue in LA or San Gabriel, but it's not so much here. Yeah, but theoretically, if that was the only place it could go, and and the 800 square feet would encroach, that's what this statute would allow.
John, I sat on the planning commission when we had accessory buildings being requested, and all we saw were RV barns and large buildings. Yeah. And it wasn't until we fixed that we slowed it down. And so this isn't going to slow that down. The half-acre lots, the large lots, and the areas makes us very appealing to people that want to do this, investors that want to put extra units on. They don't care about our animal keeping and the preservation of our ground.
Yep.
All they want to do is look at it as an investment that I can build a house and I'm going to have 2 or 3 of these. At least, how many, Alma, can they put on?
Yeah, accessory dwelling unit, just one, but then in addition to that, they can have the junior accessory dwelling within the confines of the house.
Yes, yeah, so they can have more than that. All right, so we can get back in here. The 4 foot, how's that going to work in the hills? Where some of our, because of slopes and grades, is that 4 foot based upon flat land, or is it based upon the setback, or is it based upon the property line?
Well, it's based on what's a function of both the property line and flat land. I mean, obviously, if you can't put something on a hill unless you grade.
Oh, they can dig it out. That's what I'm asking.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you can do that, if that's feasible, yes, 4 feet to the property line.
Okay, because we took out the graduated setbacks for accessory buildings for the hills because of the slopes and the terrace and the tiers and the tiered lots, because you couldn't build anything. So this eliminates any graduated setbacks based upon the size of the building. Correct? I mean, you had to have the 8 foot, then 10, and then increased it. So that
correct.
That makes it different.
Yeah, the graduated setback would not apply. Yes.
Now this comes back to, if you're in the hills and you want to put one of these ADUs there, or any of the slopes, not only just the hills, but other sloped areas, if they're going to cut into that hill, hopefully they still have to get grading permits?
Oh, of course, yes.
Okay.
Yes, they have to meet all building and safety grading, all that doesn't change. They have to get the required permits for that. Absolutely.
Okay, the state didn't overrule that.
Oh, no, not to my knowledge.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just being concerned because, I'm going to be the devil's advocate because we get letters from these doctorate people that just think they know everything, okay? It's a fancy name for lawyer, John.
And this guy's a Harvard lawyer.
Oh, a Harvard lawyer, I'm sorry. 16 foot, we already went to that. So what's to stop some of our people with our accessory buildings from converting those to ADUs and get away from the graduated setbacks?
Well, if it's an existing, just to kind of give you a scenario, if it's an existing accessory building, let's say a garage, an RV garage, that was built according to the graduated setback, and they're going inside, they're just maybe converting a portion of it, they're basically, they're not changing the setback. Does that answer your question?
No, because I can see what's going to happen. Someone's going to want to put their RV garage in on 4 foot through there and say it's an accessory dwelling. And as long as they can get through that.
I understand what you're saying. So for that reason, I think I spoke to John earlier about something along the lines. What is being proposed right now is just the accessory building ordinance. We are basically, it's not making provision for anything above and beyond that. Am I correct, John? Now, if they want to add, like, say, a one-car garage, what can happen is that they can put it, but within the 1,200 square foot footprint. They don't have to, but if they want it, it has to go within that. The intent, the way the ordinance is written, is not to allow them to circumvent the accessory building ordinance for garages and RV garages. Okay. Am I correct,
yes.
John? And for that reason, I don't know, the commission or the council may want to address the possibility of people maybe wanting to add like a patio to the ADU, or I don't know, one-car garage. I don't know, something to that effect.
And
they're not going to have garages, going to cost some money.
There are a lot of questions that we can ask that really have no answers at this point. They're just circumstances which we thought we'd addressed through our ordinance that are no longer addressed thanks to the state of California.
This thing it was passed last year, the changes, the upgrades. Went into effect January
1st.
January 1st, 2020. I know we're dealing with this now, correct? Yep. And it's because we have to update and things like that.
But we don't, like I said, we don't have any choice.
I understand. We have to be in compliance.
If we don't adopt something, then we get the statutes as the state wrote it. By the way, if you want to read it, it's Government Code Section 65-852.2.
I guess what bothers me is that under the charter, any zoning changes, that's what was worked on so hard. Any zoning changes require a 4/5 vote. And the hardest part about this is not only this council, but other councils before us. The big thing that always, it actually generated the city charter was zoning laws. Mm-hmm. Things were changed. I know we're under COVID, and this is that, but when you brought this to the Planning Commission, mm-hmm. I sat and watched it on the computer, and I don't know how many he's got back there watching us tonight, but how many inquiries did you get on this thing, Alma?
None.
None. And that's what bothers me, Kevin, is people do not know. This is going to seriously impact our large lots and our animal keeping here in this town. It may not happen this year, but it's going to happen. And I think that we need to walk slowly on this. And I know, John, we have to get in compliance. I'm not meaning that, but I don't think this is ready for us to do anything. Yes, I think it needs to go back and let the Planning Commission do Planning Commission stuff and sort through it, item by item. And then give the people a chance to understand. And I'm going to put on a political hat right now and let them know what the legislators have done to their community. They need to know. So that's in it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, y'all covered about everything, but I got one item left here to talk about. Alma on, let's see, it's number K on page 5. The wall and fence requirement. It says a 6-foot high wall or fence shall be constructed and maintained along the portion of a side or rear yard boundary where an accessory building unit or dwelling unit is closer than 5 feet to the boundary, subject to the issuance of a building permit as needed. So that means that if they put one of these little dwellings up, then they're going to have to put a fence or a wall on the side of it.
If it's less than 5 feet.
Okay, does that mean they could put it all the way down the property line, or are they just going to put that little slab in there where they...
Well, at a minimum to cover the extent of the accessory building ordinance, but I would assume that they would do the extent of the property line. It just makes sense.
And somebody's going to enforce this?
If, for example, if I get a building permit that says that positions a accessory dwelling 4 feet, then yes, we would make the requirement that they build a block wall per the ordinance.
Okay, all right. That's all I have now. Since this is a public hearing, we'll open the public hearing right now. And do we have any speaker cards, Madam Clerk?
Yes, we have the letter from Matthew Gelfand, and he wrote to staff, in light of the length of the letter, we are not asking to be read into the record. Instead, we ask that you read the short statement. Californians for Homeownership is a 501c3 nonprofit organization devoted to using legal tools to address California housing's crisis. You have been provided with a letter we submitted as part of our work monitoring local compliance with California's laws regarding accessory dwelling units. Please review our letter closely. It follows up on our July 29, 2020 letter to the Planning Commission, which provided detailed feedback on the city's draft ADU ordinance. Unfortunately, our concerns have not been addressed, and the ordinance before you requires very significant changes to bring it into compliance with state law. In places, the ordinance is simply inconsistent with state law requirements. In other places, such as its prohibition prohibition on separate addresses for ADUs. It is outright hostile to the use of ADUs for their intended purpose as independent, self-contained housing units, and it creates serious public safety risks. If the city adopts this ordinance as drafted, the ordinance will be null and void in its entirety, and the city will be required to apply permissive state law standards to ADU development. The city will also be exposed to the significant risk of litigation to vindicate the important housing creation rights of its homeowners. We urge you to continue this item and to direct city staff to engage in discussion with the State Department of Housing and Community Development regarding our concerns. If the city is confident in its drafting decision, it should have no reservations about discussing them with HCD now. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, Matthew Gelfand, Council of Californians for Homeownership.
Thank you. Is that the only?
There's no further comment.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council, and I think I'll do what Ted, I like what Ted suggested, we send this back to planning.
Can I add to that, Mr. Mayor? I think that's a good suggestion. Can I add to that?
Yes, sir.
And then I'll comment.
Yeah. I think a couple of things along with that. I think that we need to have a meeting somehow so that residents understand what we're up against. I don't know how we do it, but I don't think they're aware of it. You know, we have made every effort. Ted and I helped form the rural communities through the League of Cities, and it basically got absconded by the League of Cities, and so they're doing nothing. I think that I think that meeting is really, really, really important. People need to understand. And I know that it's probably a waste of time, but in the continuance, I also think we need to just ask Senator Roth and Assemblywoman Cervantes to see if they can do legislation and exempt us. Why not? What do we have to lose? Nothing. And just exempt us from this thing. And I think we need to do every possible thing we can do. And wouldn't it be nice if our residents began to write letters also to these people? It's an election year. I don't know how much good it'll do, but I think that we need to exhaust every single possibility in this fight. But most important, we need to let the residents know what's going on. We have an election coming up. We got a whole bunch of people saying, I'm going to fight Sacramento. And there's those of us, all of us have been fighting Sacramento for 20 years. And I also have concerns. I mean, not only should the residents know, but I want to make sure, no offense to staff, that everybody understands what we're trying to do and we're all on the same page. So I would support Berwin and Ted continuing this. I believe we need to just point blank ask Senator Roth and Assemblywoman Cervantes. You know what, even Melissa Melendez, she's not ours, but ask her if she'll help us. And we have a specific meeting to discuss exactly what's occurring right now. And I want to make sure our planning commissioners are on board, because I've now experienced twice where they didn't understand the law and were approving things that should not have been approved. So I want to make sure we do that if possible. Okay. That's all I have.
Yeah,
Thank you.
My comment on sending it back to the planning commission, which if you're certainly is within your purview to do. The options tonight are before you are, obviously you can do that, you can continue it. Option one in terms of adopting something is adopting the ordinance that the planning commission approved. Option two is to adopt the modified version of the planning commission's ordinance adoption. If you send something back to the planning commission really adopted the least restrictive ordinance that they're able to adopt. Keeping in mind the concerns about Norco and animal keeping, adopting an ordinance which is at least close to the state law requirements. If it goes back to planning commission, their only option is probably going to be to make it more restrictive. I mean, making it less restrictive isn't going to solve anybody's problem, and it's certainly not going to solve our problems with the state. So that sending back to planning commission, I'm not sure that accomplishes a great deal. We can certainly take no action at all tonight, continue it, and the response to HCD and this gentleman is send the ordinance that was adopted by the Planning Commission and say, here's what we intend to adopt, give us your, or at least send it to HCD, give us your comments. Let we do that. Guess there are probably not many other options. Yeah.
Okay, then
if the city council isn't going to adopt anything, then you're better off probably continuing it, because sending it back to the Planning Commission isn't going to stall anything in particular. We're just going to be faced with the state enforcing its statutory rules on us.
What's the deadline? I mean, if we send it back to Planning Commission, that's September, because they can't do it because they're already. Oh, hang on, they're already agendized for August. Yeah. So that means they don't meet until the second week in September, which means we don't see this until October, Andy, or the latter part of October.
That's correct. But
so okay.
Most importantly, though, is what John is speaking to.
Is getting compliant.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the Planning Commission is going to do with it.
Okay, yeah. So
and what, well, in terms of timing, I mean, realistically, probably not much of anything is going to happen. The only thing which is going to trigger HCD maybe doing something, or this organization doing something, or an individual doing something, is an application that we deny because we don't allow whatever they propose. There isn't any application like that before you now. If you adopt something, even the Planning Commission's version, it's very unlikely that you're going to get an application that isn't going to fit within that and be denied. We're looking at, like the 4-foot setback and the other 800 square feet. We're looking kind of the extremes, which so far have not appeared and are unlikely, at least in the short term, to happen. Again, I mean, Planning Commission is just, I'm not sure what the Planning Commission's direction is going to be, because all they can do is say, hey, we did the best we could in trying to adopt an ordinance which is at least incorporates most of the state law requirements and fits Norco. If you want something else, then we're going to make it more restrictive, which isn't what I think we're all looking for. What we're looking for is adopting the least restricted ADU ordinance possible, given Norco's situation. And hopefully HCD and this organization, I don't think this organization do much about anything, but HCD either approves it or says, here's what you need to do to fix it. The alternative, doing nothing, is that we end up with somebody who comes and applies, one of those investors, and says, by God, I can read the state law, here's what you got to do. And if you don't like it, I'll sue you and look for attorney's fees.
Well, I'll rescind my motion then and move that we continue this.
Can we, Andy, if we continue it, is there some way that we've got all this wonderful stuff to let people know what's going on?
Yeah, that's what I was going to suggest. We can send out a mailer to every city resident, letting them know that the city council is planning to consider this item.
Yeah.
So you're ready to do that.
And then the other thing too is,
before you do though, I mean, things cut two ways. What you have right now is a city that doesn't know it exists. If you send this out to every resident, they're going to say, what the hell, I can build something back there. So I'm not sure that's the best idea in the world, given what we're trying to accomplish.
There'd be 80% of them. 80% of them would do that, John.
Yeah. Yeah.
well, can we send a letter to Senator Rothens and ask if they will help us? Can you call them? I know.
That's
Kevin, that we sent 68.
I know he co-sponsors a bill after that.
Yeah, you know, he was, hey, Kevin, he was one of the ones that helped,
Yeah.
he was one that helped author one of these ADU deals, so.
I know.
I mean, maybe the best option is to continue it. That's what this gentleman has asked. So we'll continue it, and we're going to explore it further with HCD. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, John, if we continue this, it's eventually going to come back here. And we want it, I mean, that's it. We have to, we need to get, you know, I understand what you're saying.
I mean,
we don't advertise it. There's a guy in Corona that's already advertising ADUs, and here's how you do it. My thought is, and Mr. Mayor on this is, I don't want to form another subcommittee, but we got to get ourselves organized and get this stuff working with the planning director, yourself.
There's nothing, I mean, I hate to say this, but there's nothing that a subcommittee or the planning commission or the city council can do to massage this to adopt something which will be acceptable to you. It is not possible. It's just an act in futility. Anything that you find to be acceptable will not comply with the state law. Simple as that. So that, but the potential, I guess, in answer to your earlier question, is if we continue it, that's the suggestion here, and we send it to HCD and say, hey, here, at their suggestion, we've sent this to you. The HCD's been CC'd on all this stuff. Give us your comments, or please review this. HCD, who is somewhat overworked, when we asked to do this, remember we sent them this and said, will you review it? And HCD said, well, we aren't obligated to.
Not exactly.
Yeah. But no, it was it.
But John,
HCD.
Okay, but John, HCD is not a government agency.
Yes, it is.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay, I was thinking about this guy, this nonprofit group.
No, HCD is the Department of Housing and
Okay,
Community
it's
Development.
not. I was referring to this.
And they now have enforcement authority.
Oh, somebody from the state gave them that, didn't they? Okay.
Okay, we have a motion.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Mayor, I know it's just frustration, and like I said earlier, it's grasping for straws, and I agree with Kevin, Ted, and everyone that state would like every community to look the same. So Alma brought up that with the ADUs, we still have the 40% lot coverage. So when I was on the Planning Commission before Mr. Hoffman, and we first started all these accessory building changes and ordinances and trying to make it all fit, one of the commissioners came up with the idea of, because it was frustrating, and Ted, you went through the same thing, and then planning commissions after that, get rid of the 40% lot coverage. Change it to 25%. All the problems go away. So how illegal is this, John?
Pretty illegal.
Say, you want an ADU, then we have this overlay that says it's 25% lot coverage.
Yeah, remember all this stuff. All this stuff by its language in the statute overrides zoning. We can't adopt zone changes which make it more difficult. And we're going to have a tough enough time enforcing the 40%.
I think so.
Yeah.
Mark is going, what the hell did I get myself into?
That's right. That's right.
I have another question. What about the parallel parking on the street? Can't we do that?
Oh, yeah, no, that doesn't have anything to do with this.
Well, but it does.
Well, I mean,
let's agendize that right away.
We have the ability as a city to control how people park on our streets. I mean, you just can't preclude it. I mean, honestly.
How long would it take to fix the parking issue on a timeline?
On the street?
2 weeks.
Because I'm just wondering how many of those things, if this is continued, can we do some cleanup on parking and a few other things during a continuance? of this.
Yeah, if that solves a problem related to this.
It will.
But I mean,
If there's enforcement of a new parking ordinance, it would have an impact on this particular issue.
Just for your knowledge, we are actually bringing an item to the council regarding updating our parking ordinance because it's currently incorrect as far as for no parking, and we're dealing with all other issues, and I can bring that one forward with the changes that we're going to be proposing to council in adopting language into that basically only allows parallel parking on the residential streets and not perpendicular. We can add that as an item for you guys to review in addition to the other items we're going to bring forward to you. So that's going to be coming forward and potentially the next council meeting, if not for sure the next one after that.
Okay.
But I'm trying to get the next one.
Okay, thank you.
Good idea, Robert.
One more straw.
Sure.
All of this based on the housing crisis, and that the parallel with public transportation, and that once again goes back to larger cities, San Francisco, Los Angeles, that
urban cities.
Correct. That is where the ultimate problem is. So we want to make housing affordable, and we want it by public transportation.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm reading into this, but I think that the point is that if you're close to public transportation, then you don't have to get a car. So that the purpose of this is to keep people from buying cars.
But that ain't gonna happen in Norco.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People out here don't even believe in carpooling.
Okay, well, it wasn't quite the way I. It's almost like, okay, we'll allow the ADUs if you're within a half mile of public transportation.
Yeah, no, their rationalization is that an ADU, which is adding more density, without addressing parking, is only going to create an insoluble problem, and so the answer is to not require additional parking on the lot, so you can build more if you can walk to a bus stop.
Works in Los Angeles.
Yeah, doesn't even work in Los Angeles.
No, but
it doesn't work in LA. You ever ride a bus in LA?
On a bus stop, it takes about 2 years or 2.5 years to get a new bus route going, and then they have to go along and put in the stops. They're supposed to have handicap accessibility to them, so it takes a while to get the new route for public transportation going.
And actually in Norco, under the ordinance, realistically, we're going to be able to require that there be at least a single space related to ADUs on site, which maybe even solves some of the problems you are concerned about. That because if it's, I mean, I'm making stuff up at this point, but if the purpose of the ADU is not to get a new family in there, go rent it. If it's to get your family in and you have another place to park, maybe you don't have to park on the street. Or maybe like the one we have some dispute going on about parking in your front yard.
I have people on my street that have the cars in the street.
I'm calling for a motion again, Kevin. This is the last round. You going to second it?
Yeah, I make a motion. Oh, a second. Yeah.
Okay.
Who made the motion?
A second to continue this.
Oh.
Continue.
And you're going to talk to the agencies and. Yeah, all right. Well, I make a motion to continue this.
You're supposed to second it. I made the motion.
Oh, I second it.
Where you been?
Sorry.
Today's Wednesday,
Councilmember Grummeyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman?
Yes.
Councilmember Newton?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Bash?
Yes.
Mayor Hanna?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimous.
Thank you. Now we'll go on to council and staff reports. Kevin, we'll start with you. Go that way this time.
The only thing I'm wondering, John, you mentioned that there's some things that are aimed at stripping away zoning. I thought a lot of those were kind of going away. Do you think you could?
Well, I mean, right now, who knows? I mean, it's certainly not as popular as it was, but I mean, there are like 30 bills.
Is there some way we get a report on that, or should I ask Aaron Sassy?
Some of that comes through.
I think
comes through Aaron.
Yeah, the league is probably the best.
Yeah,
source.
okay. I'll contact Aaron and I'll get a report from her. That's all I have.
I mean, one
through those league emails.
Yeah, I'll specifically ask for that stuff and get it back to us.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, one of the things that the COVID virus does is, knocking on wood, make people take a look at maybe this high density stuff ain't so great after all.
They have people defecating in the streets in their communities. You really think they care about the COVID? Come on. I mean, I'm becoming jaded on all. I think they've lost their brains. That's all I have.
Thank you. Thank goodness. Ted? Andy? John?
Nope.
Mark? Nothing?
How many visitors we got, Mark?
But there's 200 and something look at the videos tomorrow, Ted. Brian? Chad? Alma? Dana?
I'm going to speak tonight. I just want to remind the community and all of our council to please let people know that we do have a vacancy on the historic preservation, and on EDACT we do need applicants, please. So anybody you talk to, any meetings you're on Zoom, please push to send in their application. Get them involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg? Robin? Thank y'all. Okay, I don't have anything either. With that, we will adjourn the meeting.